So I have a question here from a member of the creating community, and they ask, what does I create you mean to you? What does I create you mean to you? And this question is in reference to something I shared in a video about when I first met my mentor, Steve Hardison, in London some years ago. And when I met him, he grabbed me by the shoulders and he looked at me and he said, I create you everywhere I go. And it was at that time very cryptic. I didn't really understand what he meant. But over 2 years of working closely with him and working on creation and creating myself and creating my world, I came to understand it. Took me a while to really get what he meant, but it came to understand it. I believe I understand it now. Whether I do or not, who knows? But I have an answer that for me has been really empowering and powerful, I should say. So not just for me, but also making a difference for others. So let's first talk about the idea of creating in the context of creating a person, creating somebody else, creating myself, creating somebody. I think that you probably get this concept from watching my videos, but to speak about myself in a certain way starts to create the idea of myself as that. As long as I'm being congruent internally with that speaking, if I'm speaking some bullshit that I don't believe and I'm not in touch with my body and incoherence, and I'm probably exacerbating the opposite belief. So it's not as simple as I'm saying it. There's more depth to it and nuance, but in general for this video, the idea is that you speak something and you bring it into form in the way that you behave, in the way that you see yourself, and therefore the way that you feel and the way that you therefore act. So you speak a way of being about yourself and you bring it into form. One of the classic ones that I share often is I've been saying for many years, I'm the happiest guy I know. Not as bullshitting myself, but as a way of creating that as true. It's both a description and a creation. So I speak of myself in that way. And so then to take that same concept and to say, I create you. So it's not I create myself, I create you. Well, in essence, it's just taking that same concept and it's changing the reference point for who it's about. So I'm still the one doing the creating through the speaking, but I'm doing it about a different person. Now, you could just, so the first way this shows up is, for example, I'm out with some friends, I meet some new people, and they ask if I'm married or I have kids or anything, and I say yes, and I tell them about my wife, and I tell them a story about my wife, or I tell them about how great she is. I'm talking about my wife, but I wouldn't just say that I'm talking about my wife if I were to describe that. I would say, I created my wife. So why would I just say that instead of, I talked about my wife or I told them about my wife? Because by saying I create my wife in that moment, I'm actually maintaining consciousness around the reality that my speaking about my wife actually creates in the minds of the people listening an idea of her. So they don't know that she exists, and then I speak and the idea of her is created. And how I speak of her, the words that come out of my mouth, and more importantly than that, where they come from, the state of being I'm in that generates and is the power behind those words, is what actually creates the idea of them. So I could say something very kind, but I could have frustration in my heart about her, and they'll get some sense that I don't really believe it, and they'll create a picture of her that's not what I spoke, but what I felt, right? And so it's important that when I create for my state of being, the words are just a conduit for the energy, we could say. So when I'm creating a person, I'm talking about a person. That's one aspect of it. And why am I doing that? Because I want to put the idea of a person in somebody's mind. Well, why do I want to do that? Because that's creating. That's creation. I want to bring my heart, I want to bring spirit into form in the world. I want to inseminate every moment with the spirit, my mimetic spirit, my potential to create in the world. Things that I see from my heart, I want to bring that into form. And so, abracadabra, I create as I speak. I speak about somebody in a person's mind and they get created. And so if I were to create you, that would mean that you're not here right now, or maybe you are, but I'm talking about you. but I'm remembering that my talking actually brings you into form in that person's mind, which will then lead to actual physical form of you coming into their world in such a way where they will experience you. So if I want people to want to meet you, then I better create you in a way that the idea they have in their mind has them want to be with you. And wouldn't it be great if I created you in their mind in such a way that when they were with you, they actually saw you in a way that had them be able to access the value you have for them. So not just that you're great, but you're approachable and that you're connectable and that they'll really get you. So I create an idea of you that makes everything work better. And why do I want to do that? Because I want to create coherence in the world and love and connection and peace and people serving each other. And so I speak of people in that way. And that's one of the things I've been practicing with the idea of creating people, is speaking about people and acknowledging people in a way that creates an idea of them in other people's mind that creates more connection and magic in the world. I've spoken, I think, in recent videos about the power of acknowledgement and how that creates. This is very relevant with that. Another aspect of creating you is when I speak about you to somebody else and you're not there, I'm actually creating you too, not just in their mind, but I'm adding to the energy in the world, in the universe, held in the different individual brains, in the collective, around the ideas that I'm speaking about you. So in the same way that people talk shit on the news and that creates an idea of the in the mind of somebody that's not nice, and then that they have to deal with that, right? There's an energy in the world that influences them, and then actually if that influence is touching them, then it's actually shifting their neurology, and they have to create some defensiveness against it, which means that part of it's getting in. And so my act of speaking about you isn't just in service of these people being able to see you and know of you, it's actually in service of you being that even more. So every act of my speaking about a person actually adds to that person's belief. One of my wonderful, amazing friends, Lucy, just messaged me today in reference to something that she wrote that we shared on Instagram recently about how years ago I said to her, "You are the strongest woman in the world." And she took that idea in and she lived it. And now she's a powerlifting world champion, having had no experience some years ago of fitness and exercise really at all. But the way that happened is the idea was spoken and it was brought in. So I created her with an idea, you are this. She took it on and now she's living it, right? And so, when I say that, I still say it to her all the time. Whenever I get the opportunity or I see her or I message her, it's like, boom, I'm just saying it. I'm speaking it because I'm adding to it. Just adding fuel to the fire of that idea. And I speak it and it just adds a little bit more. And she's the one that obviously runs with it and creates it. So it's like, another good example is like the work a man does in having a baby. That's about the equivalent of creating you with my words, right? Like I give you my bit, right? But then like 9 months of caring for and carrying and like the gestation and all that. I mean, that's what the other person does with the speaking, but the speaking is still part of it, right? It creates. And so when I say I create you, when I speak about you, whether it's to another person or to you directly, it is adding to you. It's finding its way into you and it's actually creating you as more of that. And the last point I want to make about I create you is this distinction between creating you or creating somebody else versus creating myself is actually an illusion. And I've talked about this in recent videos as well, about how, I think it's the same video, about how by acknowledging a person, by telling a person what we see in them, by giving them the love we have in the form of acknowledgement of a characteristic or a trait in them, we actually activate that in ourselves. If we're being genuine and true, not if we're saying something as a way of trying to kiss somebody's butt, or if we're saying it because we're afraid that we don't think we're that, so we'll tell them they are that. If it's coming from fear, it's not going to activate it as true in me. But if I'm genuinely giving it as something I honestly see in somebody, and I want them to see that and feel that and know it just for their sake, and I'm not involved, the paradox is, by removing myself in the process of that giving, it activates it in me. So I get the gift when I give it. When I genuinely give it, I get it. And so if I create you, another reason for me to create people genuinely, powerfully, is because everything I create in a person activates it in me. So if I speak of you, if I speak about you, whether it's to you or when you're not there to somebody else, everything that I'm saying about you, all of my creating of you, creates me. I can't even create, this is like a little deeper point to it, it's not actually possible for me to create you in a way that I don't already have in me, because I can only see in the world, in the possibility of you, that which I am. And so my creation of you is actually an acknowledgement of a part of myself that I'm expressing as well, which doesn't belittle the idea that I'm saying it about you and for you. It's not a belittling of that. There's no trade-off. This isn't a zero-sum game between I can either have it or you can even have it. The point is we all have all of it, and I'm activating the part of it that is the thing that I'm speaking. When I say, you are powerful, you are wonderful, my wife is so amazing, she's so present, she serves me so deeply, and my son is so compassionate and kind, and my friend Adam is just one of the most genuine, integrous people that it's like when I'm speaking about these people, it's true. I see that, I'm sharing it, but I'm activating it in me, I'm bringing it to life in me. So to create the self and to create another person is exactly the same act. It just looks different. And whether I'm doing it to you directly or to anybody else, it doesn't matter. It's just abracadabra. I create as I speak. Today is the perfect day for you to create who you are. You are loved and you are powerful, and I'm loving you simply for your being here. I'll talk to you soon.